My life has been led by my God and my wonder. Because of his nature, I'm easily led to believe that the latter was designed by the former, and that belief has soaked through every fiber of my being. Thus, when I became but another hand of the Catholic Church, I tried to understand his ways. I tried to understand the plan he has for us all, and in every which way I tried, I failed. My last attempt is why I'm speaking to you now. You see, I'm dying. I spent 6 years trying to understand a single event in the grand plan of it all. I spent 6 years of my life walking over this same path in my mind and wondering why in the world I, of all people, had to witness such a tragedy. Why I witnessed the tragedy on the bridge of San Luis Rey. When I presented my findings, they and I were burned together. Heretic, they called me. That couldn't be farther from the truth. You see, I was this close to dying with them. On Friday, July 20th, 1714, 5 people walked onto that bridge. Midway, the bridge that had supported even the Incas collapsed under their feet. Why, God? Why did they die? I asked myself again and again, until eventually I decided to dedicate myself to the answer. The stories of those 5 explains it all, you see. It may not be clear or sensical, but it explains it nonetheless. The first was Dona Maria.
I was a quiet, dull child. My mother hated me for it. How could someone born to a family such as mine be dull, be plain as a peasant? He's as dumb and ugly as a stone, she would scream. I thought that was my cue to be alone. Having children could only be a burden to someone as simple-minded as me, and I knew they would hate me for my stupidity. Eventually, though, my mind was made for me, and I was married to a rich man. We had a single child, a girl, and in my simple mind, such a simple pleasure was all-consuming. In her infancy, it wasn't a problem. She loved my attention and adorations. It was great, and I finally thought that I would not die alone. I would not die ignored by my husband, family, and child. I was wrong, of course. As she grew older, she resented my love. We argued, and eventually, to be rid of me, she married a rich man in Spain. She put the ocean between us just so she wouldn't have to compare her beauty to her mother. She hated me. I wrote hundreds of letters to her over the years, once every month. I'd start the month, relax for a week. Then I'd go into a flurry, picking a topic and scouring the town for anything of interest and relation. Finally, I'd write my letter and rest amongst the alcoholic dreams until the cycle began again. One day, I was told my beautiful daughter was pregnant. Out of desperation, I went both to the pagans of Peru for help and to the saints of the church. I was traveling back from a holy site when the bridge fell.
I was by the Dona Maria's side the entire time. Orphaned at a young age, I had no choice but to look to my superiors. I hoped and prayed that one day I would make them happy. So when one of the women who raised me asked me to accompany Dona Maria, I thought little of it. She constantly was having me trail after her on her wild crazes. Just as troubling were her moods. In one moment, she would be smiling at me, and in the next, she would not wish to bear my presence. Forgiveness would be just as swift, and the cycle would begin again. Such insanity was trying on my young mind. Being unable to help the Doña, I myself became more and more desperate just to feel useful, to feel successful at something. When I tried to write a letter to the abbey that raised me, speaking of my woes, the Doña found it. She praised me for it, but I saw that it hurt her. But what could I do? The next day, it was too late to fix anything anyways.
Hello, my name is Esteban, and I grew up in that same abbey. I was raised by the same loving abbess, and so was my twin brother Manuel. We were always close, closer than close, really, and shy to the rest of the world. Never to each other. We had our own traditions, mannerisms, and even made our own language. But he decided to be different, to leave me behind. He fell in love with the actress Camila, and thought that I would never notice. I did. And just when he got around to denying it, he died of a terrible infection. The fever made him shout curses as me, for holding him back from what was apparently the greatest love that never was. His last words to me were insults, so of course I went to kill myself. What point was there for me in a world without him, in a world where he died hating me? There was none. Being a good Catholic, I wouldn't just kill myself though. No. I ran into burning buildings trying to help people with the hopes that I would be trapped in the flames. I took dangerous jobs and was reckless in every sense of the word. The abbess who raised me was desperate, so she convinced a captain she knew to take me aboard, to distract me from my woes with travel. I almost made it too. I was gonna be alright. And then I crossed that bridge at San Luis Rey.
My turn. I lived an odd life, always running from one place to the next, never really resting. I'd start something and never spend more than 2 weeks on it, really. But I'd always be successful. I knew everyone in town, and could tell you anything you wanted to know. I was like food for ants, in that everyone knew they needed me, for one reason or another, and had sought me out about it. One day I decided to take in a young girl I found singing in cafes for change. I raised her as my own daughter, and we became incredibly close. I taught her to sing, and because she couldn't read, I helped her memorize her lines. We traveled Peru, living and working side by side, until she became the best actress of the Spanish-speaking world. At first I worried when she fell in love with a rich man and had 3 children, but when even that didn't change her resolve, I became complacent. Until the boy was found to be deathly ill. The city air was poison to him, and at the doctor's insistence, my dearest Camilla and her only son moved to the country. Without the city's culture, she moved away from being an actress and decided instead to take up the profession of aristocracy. For her disdain for the common man was immense, and I'm sad to report that I was no exception. Yet I could not let her go so easily, and thus weaseled my way into her life in any way I could and as often as I dared. I had hoped that one day she would cast away this shroud of insulation and join me again in the theater. When smallpox decided to mar her beautiful face, that dream too was cast aside. She dug herself even deeper, ashamed of her fall from grace. She returned the jewels to those who'd gifted them to her, and assumed everyone only tolerated her out of pity. Then it seemed that not even I could save her, and she shut me out of her life completely, for I had seen her new face. It didn't bother me, but it most definitely bothered her. In one last plea, I tricked her into speaking with me. I could not live knowing that the only person that I loved in any capacity would no longer see me, so I offered to take her son back to the city, to learn as a gentleman of his standing should. Being 7, the illness of his infancy no longer affected him, and it would have been fine. Though reluctant, my dearest Camilla conceded, and off we went, to the bridge of San Luis Rey.
Learning all of this, what could I do? What could I say? What could I conclude? At first I thought nothing. I tore up my notes and tossed them to the wind. Everything was useless. Everything was chaos. But never did I lose faith, you see. And so I told myself that these people had been taken from this world, some because of their sins as actresses or gossipers, others to bring them more quickly to the golden gates of God. The courts did not agree. I was a heretic. I must be burned. My book must be burned. My life must be burned, and with it, theirs. God, why was I at the bridge of San Luis Rey?
No, all right, fight. No. I'm gonna choke out. No, water.
I want to Go, okay, go. Guess that works. Just keep walking off.
They're destroying the environment.